I'm Jennifer Romig, a professor here at Emory Law School, and my guest today is Professor Robert Parrish. We both teach legal writing, and our topic is citations. I'm going to ask Professor Parrish some general questions, and then he's going to turn the table on me and ask me some specific questions about the Indigo book, which is the citation manual you'll be using. So, Professor Parrish. Hi.
Hey, how's it going?
Good.
Good.
So the first thing I want to ask you really is, what is the purpose of creating a legal citation and putting it in a legal document?
Yeah, there are a few purposes, and all of them I think are important. The first is just to give attribution to the source material you're using for your research. The second is tied to that. You want to show your reader that you've done sufficient research and that your assertions are well supported. But one of the more interesting things, I think, is once you start creating citation sentences and you do more complicated things with citations, you're actually having a different conversation with the reader. There's like a textual conversation in the text, and then there's a citation conversation that's going on as well as to what the law has been and how it's developed, or if there's conflict in the law, you can have that conversation within the citations too.
So there's sort of a beginner level, and then there's a more sort of advanced scholarly layer to it.
Yeah, absolutely.
Yep. So when you encounter a document that has legal authorities, like where do you see the cites? Like where are they used in a document?
They're in a few different places, and I think much of it has to do with your own personal style or your preferences. Most of the time you're going to see citations at the end of sentences, and they form their own, we call them citation sentences,
Yes.
And they're sentences in their own right. They get their own punctuation that are separate from the sentence that they support. Oftentimes you'll find citations in the middle of sentences, so we call those citation clauses, and often you'll see that when an assertion is made within the text that needs immediate support, and an author may be relying on additional support at the end of the sentence, so they may also have a citation at the end of the sentence. Oftentimes you will also see, I think the third place you will see citation is at the beginning of a sentence, to open the sentence, to introduce a piece of law or a regulation or a statute, and then you can provide a full citation there, or you can wait until the end of the sentence to provide the full citation.
Like Title 42 USC Section 12101 is the Americans with Disabilities Act,
Right.
for example.
And you might not want to put that at the whole beginning of the sentence, but you might want to just say title, whatever.
Yes,
Yeah.
yes. Well, I was very surprised when I began to learn citation, as you said, that there are regular sentences like see Jane run, and then there are citation sentences. They do not have a subject or verb. All they are is a citation right after a sentence, and then you continue with your writing. We've talked about how legal writing authorities like Brian Garner, who's a really prevalent personality and scholar and expert in legal writing, he's really against putting those citations in the text in the middle of the paragraph. He wants to put those citations in footnotes so that the paragraph can flow. What are your thoughts on that?
That's a really great question. I've had to answer that question with students the last few years, because there is this trend where people want to use footnotes. It's tough, because I think there is some benefit to having them at the footnote level. It keeps the prose or keeps the text very clean, but as a person who's reading, I think as a practitioner, it's more useful to have those citations within the structure of your document, because immediately after the reader reads the sentence, they want to see what the support is. And putting it in footnotes still does that job, but it's just an additional step for the reader. And I think it's too far removed from the reader who wants to be efficient and just move through the document. What's the assertion? What's the citation and support? And then move on to the next sentence.
Yep, I'm with you, especially for memos and briefs and sort of very formal legal documents.
Yeah.
But my interest is also on the other side of the spectrum with online writing, like blogs. Okay. And I mean, if you write a blog and you put a footnote, that's definitely bad. And even writing a blog or something that's more for the public and putting these inline citations can be distracting as well. So there's also like linking and sort of less formal ways of referring to authority.
The context where this comes up most for me and where I have the most tension is with judicial opinions.
Yes.
So we want judicial opinions to be accessible to the public and readable, and putting citations and footnotes there seems to make some sense, and a lot of judges are trying to do so. But you have to determine who your audience really is. Is it practitioners who are more used to having citations within the document, or are you writing for the general public? And I think each judge, each writer can make that decision, but I agree with you. For practitioners who are doing memos and those kinds of documents, I would much prefer to see it within the text.
Yep. So if a person wants to create these formal citations, how do you do that? What resources can you use?
There's a
I'm
few.
hinting at
Yeah,
something.
we have them right there. There's a few sources. So the first being the Blue Book is the most traditional source that you have. The second being the Allwood Citation Manual, which is an alternative but has many of the same principles. And then we have the Indigo Book, which we're here to talk about, which is an online resource that contains much the same material as what we'll see in Allwood or the Blue Book itself.
That's really my question is these are three books that kind of do the same thing. What's the difference?
There are subtle differences between each of the three. I think
I'm asking about the not so subtle difference, which is that you have to pay for these,
right,
and this one is totally free and open.
That's true. So this has been compiled by editors and been made available online, and so you don't have to pay for it. And it's a great resource from that standpoint, and it again has much the same information as the other two.
I mean, I like it because it sends a message. The law is for everyone. You don't have to buy something to tell you how to cite the law. It's something that is open to anyone who can study it. And that's really my last question to you before we dig into the actual Indigo book. Do these citation guides do they set the rules? Do they determine how the law must be cited? How authoritative are they?
Moderately so. So most courts have their own rules. So they may be based off of what we see in the Blue Book or Allwood or the Indigo Book, but many courts have their own specific local rules, and those are the rules that you must follow. So what we have in the Blue Book and Allwood and in the Indigo Book are guidelines, and they're important guidelines. And I think there are things that most of us follow. So it creates kind of the baseline for what one's expectations ought to be, but they are not the law. They don't tell us what we must do. We have to look to the specific court rules for that.
Yep.
But I'd love to ask you a few questions about the Indigo Book itself. So my first question is, how does one use the Indigo Book, and is it any different from using Allwood or the Blue Book?
So, I mean, I think the first thing that's so interesting about it and valuable is that you can just use a search engine and find the Indigo Book in a full PDF format online, in open access. I believe it's Creative Commons 0 format. So it's a testament to public information. It's put out by Public Resource, and that's their mission. So you can find it for free in full, and that leads to the question of whether I have it printed and bound here just because I wanted to really hold the whole thing.
It doesn't seem like you would need to do that.
I don't think that's necessary in every single case. So you can access the PDF in exactly this format online. You could print out a few pages, of particular interest, but it's your choice. It's getting used to it.
So can you tell us a little bit more about how the book is organized, how one would find the rules that they are looking for, and just the kind of general overview of the Indigo Book itself?
Right. So like most books, it starts with a table of contents, which is really extremely useful in getting into these resources. And the first section is on the background rules. And then it goes into some very specific rules for cases, statutes, regulations, et cetera. And then at the back, like Rule 35 and 36 on parentheticals, 37 and 38, et cetera, on quotations, it returns back to some of these, sort of operational questions, like how do you quote? I love the fact that it has a quotation section with 4 rules. And that's similar to all citation manuals, like introductory matter for how you format generally, then rules that are specific to sources, then some more operational rules about quoting and that type of thing. And then, this is the last thing I really need to say about organization. The back half of any citation manual is filled with tables, and this I think is very exciting because
it reproduces the tables.
Pardon?
Does it reproduce the tables that we see in the Blue Book and Allwood?
Right. Yes. I mean, everyone does it because it's really just a useful way to present that information. So Table 1 is like guide to all of federal law. Like, how do you
Wow.
cite a federal statute? How do you cite a federal case? And it gives the basic skeleton of those resources. And then Table 3, I think, is even cooler because it goes through every state in alphabetical order.
That's
so, if you need to cite something in Ohio, for example, you would look in Table 3 and find the part that is dedicated to Ohio citations.
Which is exactly like Allwood in the Blue Book. So with all that in mind, what is the most useful section of the Indigo book to you?
Yeah, that's a hard question. I mean, I think the tables, because, like I say, that reflects a ton of work to go out and collect all those formats from all the different jurisdictions. That's the part. If I had to look something up for, Indiana or California, that's where I would go. There's a process to learning citation. So basically, as a student or someone who's new to it, I think I would spend a lot of time on the rules in the middle, like how do you cite, a statute? How do you cite a case? I would really study those because that gives you the basics for those most frequently cited sources. And then once you kind of learn that, all the details start to fall into place.
Do you think students can simply take the Indigo book, take the examples in the Indigo book, transpose them to their own work, and it would be sound citation?
To an extent, you can copy the formats. That's what it's a guide. So if I previously cited 42 USC Section 12101.
Tremendous recall.
Year two. That was a problem that I wrote. Year 2018. Okay, so that's a citation for a United States statute. It says cite USC. Use the section sign. Put in the year, the most recent year of the U.S. Code, 2018. You don't need to reinvent that wheel. You just copy that and then get the right information for the volume and the section number, and then voila, you have a new federal citation.
So one concern students may have, and even I may have, in terms of in these books, does it chop up the workflow? Are people going back to the book all the time for every citation to figure out what do I do with this kind of citation or that kind of citation? Or is this simply a desk reference that people will forget about after a while?
I think that's the most optimistic thing, and it's true, optimistic and true, that when you start to learn about legal citations, at first you really have to spend a lot of time. Should I italicize the comma after a case name? And the answer is no. But once you learn that, you never look that up again. So it's very, very common to spend a lot of time looking up every single detail at first, and then you become more and more familiar with it. And then as an experienced legal reader and as a person who's experienced generating legal information, you probably will just look at it, for a specific question, here and there.
Sounds great. Sounds like it's something that you internalize after a while then you use to take care of the more difficult problems later.
That's right.
Great.
Well, Professor Parrish, thank you so much for being here.
Thanks for having me. It's been great.
Thank you.